The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Good evening and welcome to BronxTalk. The dialogue that is commanding attention across the nation is about children who have been separated from their families at the Mexican border. It was recently revealed that hundreds of those children have been relocated to the Bronx. Tonight we present an exclusive interview with the president and CEO of the Lutheran Social Services of New York, one of the two organizations responsible for housing and caring for these children in our borough. The second half of our program will feature an interview with Congressman Adriano Espaillat, who himself was once an undocumented immigrant and has been directly involved in this issue. I do want to mention that given the sensitive nature of the subject, the importance of privacy for the children, and also Lutheran Social Services contractual agreement with the federal government, there are questions we cannot ask, which include asking about federal immigration policy and the numbers and whereabouts of children who are being cared for. Because of the importance, though, of providing contact and information to you, the public in the Bronx, we have decided to agree to those terms, and on that basis, we welcome a longtime friend of the Bronx, the president and CEO of Lutheran Social Services of New York. It's Damyn Kelly. Nice to have you with us.
Thank you, Gary, for having me.
And I will just remind our audience that Representative Espaillat will join us shortly. We're going to spend our time with you right now. Before we talk about this specific situation and the specific children, tell me about Lutheran Social Services of New York, and why do you think you were kind of selected to handle a very large and controversial situation?
Well, basically, Lutheran Social Services since 1886 has been providing residential services to children in need. We originally started out as an orphanage to assist kids back in the 1880s, and have expanded over the course of the years. In terms of our services to unaccompanied minors, we have provided case management and reunification services to that population for more than 10 years. So we are particularly trained and skilled at working with these young people, reunifying them with their families, and providing them the mental, physical, and emotional services that they need in order to succeed.
Who are the children? Give us a profile of children who are not in this very recent situation, who you've cared for, who have been separated from their families. Is it kind of traditional? I don't want to paint everybody with one paintbrush, but is it similar to foster children?
It's very much similar to foster care. So we have children who entered the United States without any parental supervision. They're either detained by the federal officials or they just go to federal officials for help. The children are then placed with us. We house them in 2 of our residential facilities, and the others who we don't have in the facilities, we connect to foster families. These families are trained by us. They're culturally competent. 9 times out of 10, they are from the same country of origin as these kids, and the focus is they stay with these foster families until we are able to find a relative or a suitable sponsor who could take the children.
I thought it was fascinating in my research of this, and we're going to discuss it with Congressman Espaillat shortly, that because a lot of people, I think, have reasonably said, well, wait a minute, you're taking them from, the border in Arizona or Texas, and you're flying them, 1,500 miles or more to New York City. Why would you do that? And the research showed, and the answer showed, New York is particularly qualified because of organizations like yours. I thought that was fascinating. And while we know that children are in difficult circumstances, I guess your goal is to get out of the political realm and figure out how to care for the kids.
Yeah, I mean, most important is the care and comfort of these children. Like any other child, they have needs, they need support, and that's what we focus on, providing that support. But the ultimate goal for our program is to reunify them with either a family member or a suitable sponsor or a suitable relative that could care for the children. That's the ultimate goal.
Are the children in this circumstance in a different or more or less difficult situation from other children that you have dealt with over the years? Or is it really the same thing, just the politics of it are a little difficult?
I think it's the same thing. Again, these are children in need. Our mission, our philosophy as an organization is to assist any child who's in need, and that's what we focus on. We don't ask where you're from, what your circumstances are. We just look at, is there a need that we could provide and meet to make sure that the children are safe and that their quality of life is enhanced.
Can you give us the range of ages that they came from at the Mexican
Sure.
border?
So we serve probably from 3 years old to about 17.
And so the children in this coming from the Mexican border fit within there pretty much?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I don't even know how to ask this. What do you do with a 3-year-old who is without his or her parents, and how do you, what can you do for them? I want to join you and hold them and welcome them. I think we all have compassion. I'd like to think we all have compassion for these kids.
So like the traditional foster care system in New York State, our parents that we use as foster parents are trained for many, many weeks in how to take care of kids. So most of these foster parents have been with our agency for multiple years and have experience working with toddlers and introducing them to American society. One of the things that's not getting out is, as I said before, we've been doing this work for a very long time. So we know how to train the foster parents. They're screened very carefully. The homes are inspected to make sure that they're safe and that there's a nurturing environment provided for the kids.
Unlike pictures we've seen in the news media of kids, for want of a better term, in cages, that is not what this circumstance is. So even though there's difficulty of moving them that far away, this may give them a better spot to be in than in some of those other circumstances.
I think what we're seeing on TV are detention centers. Lutheran Social Services does not operate a detention program. We operate a residential case management reunification program. The whole focus is the kids come to us, they're living in a careful environment, a loving environment, a nurturing environment with skilled clinicians who are staff and caring foster parents, and the kids are placed with those families.
A major question that we all have, especially after the president backed off the imperative of detaining the children or separating them, is, and you've talked about it, reuniting with their families. Just for a layman to say, well, now they've been separated at the border, there is a whole administrative, bureaucratic process there. They're now all the way in New York City. How is it possible to take, child A and match him back up with parent A?
So we have identifying information as to the parents. We have contact numbers for the parents. We may also,
even if they have been detained at the border, or
I'm not going to address that situation. We're in looking at children who have been, who have come into our program. We have the ability to connect them with a family member or a parent. We go as far as calling consulate offices. We call relatives. We call friends. When we have the opportunity.
Immigration services as necessary?
As necessary. We speak to friends, the parents, to find out, is there a suitable relative that we could place the child with?
And if the child just hypothetically came from another country, whether Mexico or Honduras or wherever they came from, I'm guessing that parent is somewhere in the Southwest. You're working with immigration services to try and make that connection?
Yes, we are.
What happens to a child who, after a period of time, you are not able to make that connection, then do you simply move to place them in, I guess, traditional foster care?
Knock on wood, we haven't experienced that situation. Most of the
With
children.
these children?
Well, the children who are currently in our custody are children who are unaccompanied children, in the United States. I'm not going to distinguish between those who have been separated and those who have come on their own. But any child that comes to us, again, the ultimate goal is reunification with either their parent, a family member, or a suitable relative.
When you heard about it, and when your colleagues at Lutheran Social Services heard about it, did you say, you know what, this is a good opportunity for us, or did the federal government reach out, or did it go through the state? I know Governor Cuomo was, very secure in saying, you know what, if they come to New York, we're going to do the best to take care of them.
Again, we've operated this program for a number of years. We have experience providing these type of services. We provide these services to any child who is unaccompanied by an adult. We don't differentiate between those who have been separated and those who came on their own. Any child who's in need is who we serve, and that's what we focus on.
Again, I want to focus on the reunification issue. Do the circumstances of the parent enter into it? Because just for a child in another circumstance, if they came from, let's say, an abusive home or a family where there were drugs or whatever, in this circumstance, is that going to be part of it to make sure, let's say, that person is, the mother or father or other relative is qualified to take the child? Does that enter into it? Or in this situation, you say, you know what, we've got to get him back to where.
No, I mean, we're looking out for the best interests of the child. So when they're placed with a family member, we want to make sure, one, that the parent is okay with that child being placed with that particular relative. We want to make sure that that relative's home is suitable, because we want to provide an environment that's safe and nurturing for that child. It's like any other program. We focus on the best interests of the child and what ensures their safety.
There was a story that came out recently that said, and it was really under 10, but look, any child in distress is a difficult thing, that many were, or some, though under, I think it was about 8, were being treated at North Central Bronx, and the physician there talked about mental depression and other obvious psychological baggage that they're bringing with them through this process. You see that?
I can't speak to those conditions. What I can tell you, that every child that comes into our program receives medical care as well as mental health care. On staff, we have licensed clinicians and social workers who are trained in trauma-informed practices, and they work with those children to ensure that any trauma that they're dealing with is addressed by our staff.
That same series of reports about children being cared for at North Central Bronx suggested, if not directly, that there is going to be an influx of more of them. Do you anticipate that seeing more children coming out of this circumstance? Or do you think the situation and the president's backing off the policy is going to mean, well, we've stabilized and this is what we've got?
I can't speak to the president's policy or what the political ramifications may be. All I know is that any child who is in need is welcome to be served. And referred to your services. Referred to our agency, is welcomed and treated just like any other child with the utmost care. We focus on education. We focus on case management. We want to make sure that that child is safe in a nurturing environment and is able to succeed in this world.
Looking ahead, because many people have been concerned about that, we're bringing children in, they've been wounded in some form. How do you view their future? I mean, it's very hard for any of us really to imagine having gone through that trauma and then kind of, I don't know, coming out okay, so to speak. How do you view their future, and can you show a record of success even reuniting children with families who might be far away?
Sure. As I said,
or even incarcerated as part of an immigration
We've been operating this program for a number of years and have reunified hundreds of children with family members or their parents. Again, that's the ultimate goal for us, is for reunification. Children are resilient. We provide all the services that they need in order to help that resiliency. That's our focus, making sure that those kids receive the best services they can while they're in our custody.
What can you tell me about where they are? I'm not looking for locations, but the kinds of facilities. Are these group homes? Are they foster homes? Are they central? And then what sorts of facilities do they have available?
So with Lutheran Social Services, we have a capacity of 58 children. And so some of those kids,
how many?
58.
58.
Right. So some of those children are in our residential facilities, and the bulk of the children are with foster parents, all of whom have been screened by us, identified, and trained to take on these children.
I think we should mention that Catholic Guardian Services, at least were listed as the other provider who's working with some of these children. Damyn Kelly, I want to thank you for being with us and providing the exclusive. I know that other media have called and you haven't responded, but we really believe strongly in making sure the people of the Bronx get the best information firsthand if it's possible. I appreciate your time. And we also all, I know, appreciate you and Lutheran Social Services care of children.
Thank you, Gary. We appreciate it.
Great. Maybe we'll give us a website or something for people who want to contact.
Sure. So if people want more information about our
services,
sure, about the programs that we offer, because we offer more than services for immigration, our website is www.lssny.org.
Great. Damyn Kelly, thank you again. And folks, we are going to take a short break, and then right after we take that short break, we will have Congressman Espaillat, who will join us, I believe, from Washington on the phone, but he's got his own point of view about this very controversial situation. We'll be right back. Back with you on Bronx Talk, and we're going to go down to Washington, D.C. and say hello to the congressman from the 13th Congressional District, Congressman Adriano Espaillat. Nice to have you with us, sir.
Thank you for having me once again in your show.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Next time we'll have you in the studio, but obviously things are brewing down there, and you got a lot to do. Before we get into the specific issue, I know this is a very personal issue for you, so maybe you could talk about why that is. I know why it is, but maybe you can express your own personal circumstance when you arrived in the country and how you ended up going from there all the way to being a congressman.
Well, I came as a young boy with my parents. My grandparents were already here since the 50s, before I was even born. And we came on a visitor's visa. We overstayed our visa. And then eventually we had to go back to the DR to get our green card. Our grandparents petitioned for us. Some people like to call that chain migration. I like to call it family reunification. We all lived in one apartment for 7 years. My brother, my sister, my parents, and my grandparents. And I think it was a great experience, and I wouldn't change it for the world. I owe a lot to this nation. This is my nation, and now I'm a member of Congress, and this is a real American story, I believe.
If you or your family were to have that circumstance now, would the process have been similar, and could you have had the opportunity to become a congressman?
Probably not. Not with the policies that are being pushed right now. It would have been very difficult for my grandparents to petition for us. It would have been difficult for us to go back after we overstayed our visa and get our green card. And so it would have been really hard. I probably wouldn't have stayed here, would have never came back to the United States. Subsequently, I wouldn't have been a U.S. Congressman.
Congressman, the president has laid out the justification for this get tough policy, saying that if we don't close the borders, there will be millions of them coming through. He said they will bring opioids and drugs, and they also, certainly he's talked about the M13 gang, and they will bring crime and gang, and they're also, of course, many people say they're stealing jobs from American citizens.
Those
Is
are
that
all-
justification appropriate, and does it make sense to you?
Those are all scare tactics and the strategies that have been used throughout the history of our nation to scapegoat people. The fact of the matter is that study after study after study shows that immigrants are far less likely to commit a crime than U.S.-born citizens. I don't know of any undocumented immigrant that walks out of his house in the morning and say, okay, let me go get myself arrested today so I could get deported back home. In fact, they are very much, they comport themselves very much within the parameters of the law. They're more law-abiding citizens than U.S. residents themselves, and U.S. citizens themselves. They are, by far, in all studies after studies, show that disproportionately by a lot, U.S. born citizens are likely to commit more crimes than undocumented immigrants. They just don't go out there. If you're working washing dishes and send money back home, I don't see why you will go out there and jump the turnstile, get picked up by a police officer, and get deported. I just don't see it. And so this information, because that's what it is, this information has been perpetrated and has been peddled out there to make it look as though immigrants are bloodthirsty criminals. It couldn't be far from the truth. They wash our dishes. They deliver our food. They take care of the elderly and frail. Some of them take care of our children. They mow our lawn. They pick up our crops that we put on our table to eat. This is who they are. And so, I don't know what the big deal is about. It's been that way all along in America throughout its history. Why should it change now?
Congressman, previous to even when you were elected to the Congress, and this has been previous to the current presidency, there has been numerous dialogues about figuring out how to get a path to citizenship. Are we farther away from having a path to citizenship than ever before? Or is this process about to force a dialogue that between certainly the fractured Congress that will get us to a point where there will be a path to citizenship for people who want to come in a lawful way and immigrate to the United States?
Well, I think what's happening is that the Republicans are loading up what should be a simple sort of like question. For example, Dreamers, which are 86% of Americans feel that Dreamers should stay here. In fact, it's not amnesty. They're going to have to stick around for about 15 to 20 years before they even can apply for citizenship. For 8 years, according to the bills that have been put forward, they have to have a temporary green card. For 5 years, they got to have their regular green card, so you're going on 13 years there. And then they have to apply for citizenship. So, most Americans feel that Dreamers should stay in our nation. But the DREAM Act has been loaded up with other stuff, like $25 billion for the wall, doing away with diversity visas. Diversity visas are the ones that guarantee that New York City and New York State and the nation continues to be a melting pot to bring people from sub-Saharan Africa, from El Salvador, from different countries around the world. They want to do away with family reunification and put heavy restrictions on that. So they load up the Dreamers issue with all these other complicated immigration reform issues. And now we see also the issue with the children that are being separated from their parents. And so when you load all of that up, it becomes very difficult for there to be a consensus. And that's been the problem.
I saw a press conference with you, and you said that we absolutely will not trade or negotiate some of these items, and that we want it all, I think was the phrase that I heard you quote. The president says it's the Democrats' fault. It's that kind of attitude that is stopping us from getting an agreement. Do you buy that?
I don't buy that. In fact, I'm willing to see money spent in the ports of entry, which is where all the drugs and illegal guns and human trafficking is coming through. They're very antiquated, and they need a facelift. They need to be upgraded and modernized.
So
I don't have a problem with that. But if he wants to $25 billion for a wall while he's cutting Medicaid and Medicare, and in addition to that, he's saying now the families cannot reunify, and that TPS is gone, temporary protected status is gone for countries that witnessed natural disasters and war, then no. The answer is no. I'm not willing to trade the children for the dreamers or vice versa.
Congressman, we're almost out of time, but I do want to talk about the children. You visited a center in East Harlem. We just did a segment with the Lutheran social services that are taking care of some of the children in the Bronx. You came out of that session and said they're doing a wonderful job. Talk to me about what you found and what this means in this process.
I saw the social workers really engaged, trying to unify those children with their parents. In fact, when I met with them, 100 of them had already been unified with their parents. A real commitment with the foster moms, some of which had 6 and 7 children. I saw them really committed to those children and to the plight that they're undergoing right now. And so, to some degree, the children have been sent to New York City, New York State, over 700 of them, because we have a strong and resilient foster care network. And so they're far away from their moms and dads. They've come from Texas, Arizona, and California, but we got to get them back to their parents and adhere to the Flores decree, which says that a child should not be incarcerated for more than 20 days.
Do you expect more children to come to New York City and the Bronx, or do you think, basically given the change in policy from the federal government, they will not send more children to New York? It's a long ride, I'll tell you that.
If they're not split from their parents, then I don't see them coming. And I'm hopeful that the federal government will adhere to the Flores decision. And I understood today that they're not longer releasing or sending mothers and dads to be prosecuted. That they're keeping them together, but they're keeping them together in a jail-type setting, in a military camp, or in a tent home. So that they're still under very adverse conditions. So, and children should not be under those conditions.
So I guess in that way, Congressman, we're almost out of time, but in that way you're, I guess, gratified that New York State is able to enter into the process and take care of the children themselves and give them a better chance at reunification and having a little bit of a better life, unlike what may be going on at the border. I mean, that would be the conclusion.
I'm very proud of New York State and its citizens and residents. They've stepped up, and they showed that we care. And Americans in general, to some degree, to a large degree, the president had to backpedal on his policy because America stood up and said, this is not what we stand for.
Okay, I'll give you 15 seconds. What is realistic and what would you like to see next to get everybody together and solve this problem?
Well, I would like to see the Dreamers issue resolved on its own merit and the children being brought back to their families. Then we could have a vigorous debate about comprehensive immigration reform.
Congressman, thank you so much for your time. I know you're busy in Washington. We appreciate you spending a little time with us, and we'll tell you good night, and we hope to have a longer interview when you're up here in the Bronx the next time.
We'd love to do it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Folks, we're just going to say good night. It's been a very important show. I hope you have learned something. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have questions, you just get to us. You can send us an email on our website. You can make a comment on our Facebook page. And otherwise, thanks to Helen, thanks to William, thanks to Damyn Kelly for coming here. And, of course, thanks to the Congressman. See you next week. Good night.